Section 1 of Captain Billy's Whiz Bang, Volume 2, Number 18, March 1921. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Larry Wilson. Captain Billy's Whiz Bang, Volume 2, Number 18, March 1921, by W. H. Fawcett. Laugh your cares away. When you get home from work at night and puzzled what to do, just buy a Whiz Bang magazine and read it through and through. It'll give you joy and comfort, take all the dull cares away, if you read the Whiz Bang Journal and laugh the livelong day. Captain Billy's Whiz Bang, America's magazine of wit, humor, and philosophy, published monthly by W. H. Fawcett, Rural Route No. 2 at Robbinsdale, Minnesota. We have but one sole loyalty, and that is loyalty to the American people. Theodore Roosevelt. Edited by a Spanish and World War veteran and dedicated to the fighting forces of the United States. End of Section 1.
Section 2 of Captain Billy's Whiz Bang, Volume 2, Number 18, March 1921. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Captain Billy's Whiz Bang, Volume 2, Number 18, March 1921, by W. H. Fawcett. Drippings from the Faucet. At the close of the recent war, on my way home to the Whiz Bang farm, still in uniform, I chanced on an old sea captain friend of former days down on New York's Battery, old Jim Edmonds. Later in the day, returning to my hotel with old Jim in tow, I found an invitation to a formal dance and card party awaiting me for that evening. I hit upon the idea that it would be well to take Captain Edmonds along, that his stories of the sea dogs would prove entertaining to the guests. Accordingly, I persuaded Jim, after much difficulty, to buy a dress suit for the occasion. The tailor couldn't convince Jim that the vest should be cut down and with only one button, but finally they compromised on a 2-button vest. All went well until we arrived at the hostess's home, and I introduced Captain Edmonds to her. Jim had on a medal he won for saving a ship at sea, and my hostess, at first puzzled as to whether he was an ex-army captain or a sea skipper, noticed the medal and exclaimed, "Captain, I see your naval." The old man blushed and blurted out, "Yes, and if that dang tailor had his way, you could see a whole lot more." The other evening, I picked up my old neighbor, Bob Yeager, for a flivver spin to see the sights of Minneapolis. First of all, we visited the National Dutch Room to enjoy the cabaret. Bob was much astounded as he viewed the shapely dancers shimmying to the jazziest of jazz orchestrations. "What do you think of it, Bob?" I inquired. "I think you'd better ask the orchestra to play a wedding march and play it quick," he retorted. Ignorance sometimes causes a lot of trouble, and sometimes it falls upon the innocent. Witness the case of Gus, our hired man. I went with Gus to the Shoe Palace in Robbinsdale, where he purchased a new pair of boots. Now, Gus suffers from a common malady, perspiration of the feet, and he's very sensitive about it. The clerk sprinkled some French chalk into the new shoes as he was about to try them on. Gus got up angrily. "If I can't try on a pair of your boots without having you sprinkle chloride of lime in them, I'll take my trade elsewhere," he bellowed. It was with much difficulty that I pacified Gus and explained the use of the chalk. So now Gus has a new pair of boots and without the lime disinfectant. A few days ago, for the first time in many moons, I heard sweet strains of Sweet Adeline coming in a rich soprano with bass accompaniment from a passing automobile on the Whiz Bang farm trail, and it brought me out of my reveries and revived memories of bygone days. Thoughts of the many times I had heard that song along the trail from town, just after the bars of Robbinsdale and Casey's Roadhouse would close, came to me sweetly. This brand of choral singing has become a lost art under Prohibition. Sweet Adeline, as sung by a troupe of celebrators who wouldn't know whether they were standing on their feet or their heads, was very beautiful. To enjoy it thoroughly, one had to be quite drunk himself. Jack would sing the tenor, Bob the bass, and I would join in the chorus in sentimental strain. It was all very touching. With it, nothing can compare. In my memories, I can still picture Jack's tenor squawking, "You're the flower of my heart," and Bob's bass refrain, "Sweet Adeline," after which came the grand finale. Ah, those were happy days. The couple that left an automobile seat at the Whiz-Bang farm a couple of months ago while they went to town to report the theft of their automobile haven't come back yet, and I don't know what the deuce to do with the seat. End of Section 2. Section 3 of Captain Billy's Whiz-Bang, Volume 2, Number 18, March 1921. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Captain Billy's Whiz-Bang, Volume 2, Number 18, March 1921, by W. H. Fawcett. Farmyard Philosophy. Many a man's reputation depends on what isn't found out about him. Women are divided into two classes, those who desire husbands and those who desire single men. A good man who has gone wrong in reality is a bad man who has just been found out. The charity that begins at home is usually a stranger elsewhere. We note that the banker continues to take a lot of interest in his work. The fellow who is driven to drink will take a long ride these days. Why not appoint an electrician to censor movies? He's used to shocking things. Love has all senses except common sense. What has become of the old-fashioned man who used to be able to hit a bullseye on the spittoon at 30 feet range? Authorities have ruled that liquor can be placed in mince pies legally, but if we had the liquor, we wouldn't wait for the pie. A Minnesota man has a dog that chews tobacco and still has some sense left, but it doesn't drink the liquor peddled these days. A writer to the Whiz-Bang asks, is marriage a success? We'll solve the question by letting the married folk fight it out among themselves. A politician says the American people are being coddled too much. He's right. Even the bootleggers won't let you pour out your own drink anymore. The amount of money a man has is the difference between his love for that evil and his love for women. Women estimate friends by the advantages to be derived from them. Men suspect women too much and the woman not enough. An old husband is an honor to his wife. Balzac said, "Woman is a creature between man and the angels." How true! If it were not for her, all men would have an easy road to heaven. Love may be blind, but don't take chances and come home with a long silk stocking in your pocket. Powder is the dust the gods have given women wherewith to blind the eyes of men. All men are not homeless, but some are home less than others. Man is often blind to virtue, but never to beauty. The frail young thing who is too tired to run an errand for mother can wear out the huskiest man on the dance floor. End of Section 3. Section 4 of Captain Billy's Whiz-Bang, Volume 2, Number 18, March 1921. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Captain Billy's Whiz-Bang, Volume 2, Number 18, March 1921, by W. H. Fawcett. Short quips. Goosey Goosey Gander. The Smiths heard Lisa Gander, their maid, in the bathroom laughing and giggling for nearly an hour. "What's so funny, Lisa?" asked Mrs. Smith, knocking on the bathroom door. "Laws o' me," replied Lisa between giggles. "I's so nervous I can't dry meself." Discounting a discount. A real estate agent was offered $50 less 2.5% discount for cash for an option on a piece of property. Being a poor mathematician and wishing to conceal his ignorance of arithmetic from his customer, he excused himself for a minute and sought his new stenographer. "Good morning, Miss Brown," he said in his most expansive smile. "Delightful weather we're having, ain't it? Now, tell me, if I were to give you $50 less 2.5% discount for cash, how much would you take off?" Instead of figuring it out, the young lady promptly put on her hat and coat and went home, saying she had been insulted. Darned if we can see what there was to get insulted over. If she couldn't figure it out, why didn't she say so and let it go at that? A Pullman porter has just compiled a book on birth control. Too much smell. Mandy was gazing upon the shop window display of toilet water hungrily. "Come on away from dar, Mandy," says Rastus wearily, "or yo will be tempted to buy some." "Rastus, I's gwine to buy a bottle ob dat toilet water." "Come on way, Mandy. You all smell like a toilet water already." A Carmen's Love Code. When a woman is sulky and will not speak, exit her. If she gets too excited, control her. If she talks too much, interrupt her. If her ideas and yours do not coincide, convert her. If she is willing to come halfway, meet her. If she comes all the way, receive her. If she wants to go further, conduct her. If she wants to go all the way, dispatch her. If she proves you did her wrong, compensate her. If she goes up in the air, condense her. If she wants chocolate, feed her. If she will permit you, kiss her. If she wants to dance, jazz with her. A new proposal. Half in earnest, half in joke. Tell me, maiden, ere I'm broke, buying booze and lunch for thee, tell, oh, tell the truth to me. Ere my cash is all turned loose, sweetheart, is there any use? Business was good. A gob on a furlough telegraphed his ship commander as follows, quote, "Sir, just got married. Please wire me 10-day extension of leave to finish honeymoon." End quote. Why he needs paper. The Rocky Ford, Colorado Gazette topic prints this one. The editor met a farmer reader on the street who was considerably in arrears with his subscription and suggested that the farmer liquidate, come across, dig up a little coin, but the farmer said he had no money. "Well," said the editor, "bring in some chickens." "I have no chickens," said the farmer. "Then," said the scribe, "bring in some potatoes, corn, wheat, or something." "I have no corn, no wheat, or potatoes," said the farmer. "Well," continued the pencil pusher, "you might bring in some cobs. I can burn them anyway." "Cobs," said the farmer. "Cobs. Why, man, if I had cobs, I wouldn't need your paper." I can shake my shoulders. I can shake my knees. I'm a freeborn American. I shake what I please. A choice of evils. Would you marry her just because she's wealthy? Don't you know she has a questionable past? Well, what of it? If I don't marry her, I shall have a questionable future. End of section 4.
Section 5 of Captain Billy's Whiz Bang, Volume 2, Number 18, March 1921. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Captain Billy's Whiz Bang, Volume 2, Number 18, March 1921, by W. H. Fawcett. Pictureland Flattery. Editor's note. Here's a story for young girls with movie ambitions. In fact, it's a crackerjack of a story for women in general. I do not believe that the public, outside of Los Angeles, realizes that the favorite form for gaining a lady's favor is to tell her she ought to be in pictures. Girls strange to Los Angeles fall hard for this style of flattery. very often with serious final result. Designing men quite frequently bunco the fair, and trusting creatures, and those who know, declare it is surprising how the ladies like the movie flattery. But here is the story, true to nature and only intended for the eyes of the fair sex. By Richmond. Young women who desire to break into the movie should be prepared to take a little breaking in themselves, unless they indeed are fortunate and bump into a man instead of some of the rat horde that infests movie land. No line of business in the world combines more petty jealousies than creep through the picture world. Men play the women against one another. Women play men, and the whole bunch forever conjure to hold the upper hand. The following recital, by a clever Frenchwoman who sought a place in filmdom, is typical. This woman was on the point of leaving for New York, where she admitted that it would be necessary for her to wear scant clothing in front of assembled multitudes at the Winter Garden. But better, she thought, than performing same for the benefit of sundry individuals who passed the girls along according as new faces and opportunity offer. The woman in question was French, of superb figure and doubtful picture talent. She was a fine dancer, also a singer. She told of being invited to the home of well-known Hollywood character Prince Trubadski and wife, who recently departed presumably for Europe. Trubadski ranks as one of the greatest sculptors in the world, and his Hollywood home saw many a hijinks, intrigue of love, and gambling revel. The prince, a good-natured old fellow, cared not what anyone else did, so long as he could gamble and not be obliged to eat meat. His wife enjoyed the society of young men, though not many of them seemed to break their necks courting her favor. The princess didn't get by very well, not any too sweet with a little tea abroad. So our lady of film ambition meets a number of men who lounge in and out partaking of the Trubadski hospitality. Says the first, "How comes it, madame? With those eyes you are not in pictures. Surely there must be some mistake. Now I am the leading man of the company. I am sure I could get you a chance if you would like to try. But of course we must go out to talk it over. A little dinner perhaps tomorrow night in my apartment. But my dear, what is there to be talked of? The leading man seems to think the lady dull, and drifts away. Then the second. Who? That fellow told you he could get you a part? Why, he's only the leading man. I am the director. Leave it to me. Just you and I will go out for a little dinner tomorrow night and talk things over. But my dear sir, the leading man also asked me to go out with him to dinner, or come to his apartment so the business could be settled. Still, a third man. Did he say he was the director? I am the director. He is only the assistant director. He has no say. I will fix you up, you black-eyed beauty. Tomorrow night, if you meet me, I'll have a fine big car, so warm inside. We will take a little trip, you and I. Oh, just to talk over some details. Madam speaks again. But my dear sir, 3 times now tonight have I been asked out to dinner to see what shall be done for me to get a part. Does one always have to eat dinner before getting into pictures? A fourth man. Piffle, I am the manager of the entire company. Those fellows haven't a word to say about it, just bunking you. Come with me to my little cabin up in Laurel Canyon tomorrow night. It is quiet, and we will not be disturbed while talking over the business. But still a fifth. Don't let those men kid you. I have put up all the capital. My father is a rich man in South America. When it comes down to it, these fellows work for me, and though I don't interfere much, naturally I would hate to see a girl that looks like you get left. The madam talks once more. I cannot go to dinner with you. I have been asked by the 4 other men. I might take a chance with the leading man because he's halfway young. Though everyone says he doesn't count. If I had to eat dinner with someone, I'd guess I'd pick out the youngest and let you burned outs try your luck somewhere else. But I'm eating by myself tomorrow night. 2 or 3 cameramen and some publicity agents possibly invited the lady out to dine, but the one she seemed to remember began with the leading man and ended with the fellow who said he owned the bankroll that kept the company on the map. Couldn't understand. Bellboy. Good morning, Rastus. I's done lost my job at the Lorngren Hotel, and I can't understand how come. Rastus. What you done, nigga? Stole something? Bellboy. All I done was to go in the main dining room and page a girl called Carrie Age. End of section 5.
Section 6 of Captain Billy's Whiz-Bang, Volume 2, Number 18, March 1921. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Captain Billy's Whiz-Bang, Volume 2, Number 18, March 1921, by W. H. Fawcett. Cherubim of Hell. Reverend Morrill, the Whiz-Bang's fire-eating gospelite writer, is now touring the West Indies for this magazine. Remember the Martinique articles written after his recent tour to that sinful island for the Whiz-Bang? His present trip presages some more hot sermons. In the April issue, Reverend Morrill's story of Parisian life, Midnight Madness, will appear in the Whiz-Bang. Later, during the summer months, he will deliver to our readers a carload of dynamite. Watch for his explosion. By Reverend Golightly Morrill, pastor of the People's Church, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Helen never raised more hell in Troy than the island of St. Lucia did in the West Indies. It is some 250 square miles, is volcanic, and has been in constant warlike upheaval. Our ship, the Caracat, has arrived here, where for 150 years the French and English have cut each other's throats. From 1605, when English settlers landed in the Olive Blossom from Barbados and were massacred in less than 2 months, others were smoked out by natives burning red pepper, to 1814, when the isle was finally ceded to Great Britain. St. Lucia has been seeded with hate and borne a harvest of death. In 3 years, from 1793 to 1796, England lost 80,000 soldiers, including 40,000 dead. This topped the loss of Wellington's army from all causes during the Peninsular War. Add to this yellow fever, malaria, the deadly fer-de-lance snake, hurricanes, earthquakes, bush bandits, and runaway slaves the Revolution set free, who kidnapped, ravished, maimed, burned, and robbed. And St. Lucia's cup of gall and gore is running over, as are the wasps, centipedes, tarantulas, mosquitoes, and scorpions over the people. This was a Pandora's, not a Christmas box. I wonder that all the inhabitants are not like the mad woman who rushed out of the insane asylum, howling at us as we entered Castries harbor. St. Lucia was a martyred maid in the time of Diocletian, and lost her money and her eyes. The island bearing her name has suffered outrage and martyrdom, and may well invoke her as the patroness of the poor and blind, for its inhabitants are afflicted with poverty and eye disease. The landlocked harbor is the military key to the West Indies. Marne and Vigy are striking fortifications, and historic hilltops in the background have been bathed in the blood of those climbing the cavalry of death. They were drenched in mist and rain when we docked. Coal and not carnage is the leading industry now. Instead of shambles, all is soot. Ships come for fuel, not to fight. As at Nagasaki, Jamaica, St. Thomas, and Martinique, women do the coaling. In place of King Lee's poem, "Men must work and women must weep," it is "Women must work and men must sleep." The coal wenches are amazing Amazons. How they wiggled and waltzed with coal baskets on their heads, sweating, swearing, singing snatches of French songs, and swaying to the music of a carnival band that came down to the boat and acted like madcap strolling players standing on heads and hands. The girls made a few cents a basket. If one greedily ran ahead out of turn, there was a switchman to lash her back in line. What coal-black caryatids! Wonderful models, not of manners or morality, but muscles that would give a sculptor fits. Sure, Michelangelo would have wrestled with them, but Ben Cellini would have thought twice before he dared throw them about, as he did his model, whom he grabbed by the hair, kicked and mauled so she was compelled to anoint her wounds with bacon fat, while he stood around and larfed. These husky, dusky damsels would have brained him with a lump of coal, thrown him in the sea, or mopped up the island with him. This holiday work gave the begrimed beauties extra money. They like work, and carry their burdens on, not in their heads, the baskets often weighing 150 pounds each. Streets of Castries are laid out in right angles, and many of the population were laid out in the streets at all angles. Every old soak fills up. I saw a black man and woman stagger along the walk, fall in the gutter, make love and wallow there like pigs. In the outskirts, darky women were dragging their drunk lovers, brothers or husbands through the mud by heels or head, or spreading them out like clothes to dry on doorsteps or window sills. Their squalor was stentorious and stercoraceous. Castries was a medley of noise, music, and mud. The only Bible commandment followed was the 11th, "Thou shalt get stewed." The patron saint of the city must be Saint Amant, the French 17th century bacchanalian bard, who received inspiration for his drinking songs by imbibing enormous quantities of spirits, which resulted in ebullitions like la debauche. Alcaeus said, "Wine in truth," and it was a very naked truth we saw in the casino on the hill. Yes, it was quite orgiferous. What is an orgy? Listen to Gautier. Oh, the orgy, giving to the winds its heaving breasts, red with kisses. The orgy shaking out its perfumed hair upon its bare shoulders, dancing, singing, shouting, holding one hand out to this man and the other to that one. The orgy, hot courtesan, that yields readily to every fancy, that drinks punch and laughs, that stains the cloth in its gown, that dips its garland of flowers in a bath of malmsey wine. The ribald orgy, showing its foot and its leg, letting its heavy head fall to right or left. The quarrelsome, blaspheming orgy, quick to snatch its stiletto from the garter. The quivering orgy, that has only to stretch out its wand and turn an idiot into a poet, and a poet into an idiot. The orgy that duplicates our being and sends fire running through our veins, sets diamonds on our eyes and rubies on our lips. The orgy, the only poetry that is possible in these prosaic days. The casino orchestra was squeaking, the couples reeking, airs were lively like those of the girls. One temptress asked me to give her a good time, and my watch, another charmer wanted my gold charm, but discretion was the better part of virtue and valor. To escape with money and morals, we slid downhill after throwing them a few shillings to buy religious tracts, to make tracks in a different direction. In town, a crowd stood watching two women fighting and shaking their fists and naked breasts at each other, till the sweet milk of kindness turned to sour hate. I went to a local banker to change some money. He was not in his office or home, but his charming daughter was. We exchanged Christmas courtesies in coin. She said she disliked our high American exchange, the color line in United States, and praised the fact that blacks and whites in St. Lucia ate, slept, and grew up together. I was sorely tried, for a long time resisted temptation, but eventually succumbed to the enticements of this Eve's daughter. She made me drink a glass she had filled with old French rum, syrup, lime juice, and other good things. I can't remember, except that it was eloquent of the time, place, and occasion. O tempora, O Morris! How blessings brighten as they take their flight! I write with a glass of water near by, in spite of the Horatian dictum that songs are not able to live long or please that are written in draughts of water. But I am writing prose, not poetry. The guidebook asserts that modest sleeping accommodations can be found in this island. If so, it is one of the few places in the West Indies where, by day and night, the traveler is offered sleeping accommodations far removed from sleep or modesty. Cricket is popular in the Castries, but not the bedbug and cockroach. If one is socially inclined, there is many a black beauty whose backsteps take hold on hell. One is accosted noon and night. Both traffic in the West Indies is not always legitimately commercial. At different isles girls come aboard to sell beads, fruit, and themselves. A ship is often delayed in getting these moral derelicts and strumpet stowaways put off. Do not be surprised if at various ports men board the ship and invite Americans going ashore for the night to come and stay with their sisters, a hospitality quite Mexican and Latin American. This is old stuff to observing travelers, but not often referred to by the average writers and lecturers on the West Indies, who profoundly inform you the sky is blue, the grass green, and the water wet. True, but Columbus discovered that. Is there nothing else to describe? End of section 6. Section 7 of Captain Billy's Whiz Bang, Volume 2, Number 18, March 1921. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Captain Billy's Whiz Bang, Volume 2, Number 18, March 1921, by W. H. Fawcett. A Dog Story. 2 dogs on a trip through the Minnesota woods came upon a skunk. After considerable discussion, Little Dog was chosen to engage the strange intruder at battle. When he returned, Big Dog asked him how he had fared. "Fairly well in the first round," reported Little Dog, "but in the second attack the son of a gun gassed me." A friendly household. "A flirt am I?" exclaimed Mary Ann, under notice to go. "Well, Ann knows them as flirts more than I do, and with less excuse." She shot a spiteful look at her mistress, and added, "I'm better looking than you. More handsome? How do I know? Your husband told me so." "That will do," said her mistress frigidly. "But I ain't finished yet," retorted Mary Ann. "I can give a better kiss than you. Want to know who told me that, ma'am?" "If you mean to suggest that my husband—" "No! It wasn't your husband this time," said Mary Ann. "It was your chauffeur." Sweet kisses. He. "Oh, dearie, please give me just one." She. "I can't." "Why?" "It's Lent." "Will you when you get it back?" Another good drink has been scratched off our list when we make our rounds of the bootleg joints. Sherry and egg, for with eggs at $1 a dozen and sherry 90 cents a finger, we can't make the grade. However, as McIntyre and Heath might say, if we had some sherry, we could have sherry and egg, if we had an egg. He gets a tip. The dinner was excellent, and what made it better still was the fact that the girl who waited at table was one of the prettiest girls he had ever seen in his life. And now it was time for him to leave his host and hostess and return to town. As luck would have it, however, it was discovered too late that the last train had gone. There was no alternative. He would have to stay the night, but the difficulty was that the house was full. At last a bright idea seemed to strike the hostess. "I hardly like to suggest it," she said, "but would you mind turning in with the cook?" Knowing full well that they kept only the one maid, who he had already seen, he accepted the offer with almost unseemly alacrity. "Oh, that's all right," said the hostess, obviously much relieved. "The bed will be quite large enough. You'll find him quite a superior man indeed. He's engaged to our parlour maid." Oh, mommer, boil my socks. We've heard a lot of boarding-house jokes, but the one our hired man Gus tells is the prize winner. Gus was boarding in Chicago once, where they had no napkins. Whenever Gus wanted to wipe his fingers, he called the shaggy Newfoundland dog and rubbed them in the dog's hair. Saturday night the cook washed the dog, and Sunday morning they had soup. End of section 7.
Section 8 of Captain Billy's Whiz Bang, Volume 2, Number 18, March 1921. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Captain Billy's Whiz Bang, Volume 2, Number 18, March 1921, by W. H. Fawcett. Questions and Answers. Dear Captain Billy, why is a marriage performed on Friday considered unlucky? Who do? Friday is so named because allotted to Frigga, the goddess of marriage. Perhaps that is why ceremonies on that day are so unlucky. Dear Captain Billy, my husband insists on wandering about the house barefooted at night, and I've been wondering if the servants have been attracting him out of his slumbers. What should I do? Miriam divorce. If you tax placed judiciously about the house will cure your husband's night walking in his bare feet. Dear Captain Bill, my fiancée says she will not marry me until I have done something big in life. Can you suggest something? Worried Romeo. Why not try washing elephants? Dear Skipper Bill, what is meant by a ruined career? Carrie A. Kidd. Bartending. Dear Captain Bill, who was the first jockey? Eve. Adam entered her in the human race. Dear Whiz Bang Bill, if a flivver ran over a farmer's rooster, what would he be out? Artie Choke. Nothing that I know about, except possibly his rooster would be out a foot or two. Dear Captain Billy, who was the world's greatest female juggler? Soubrette Sue. Nat Goodwin. Dear Captain Billy, what is the meaning of the word flapper? June Pease. Flapper is usually applied to a girl who flaps. Captain Bill, I am a wrestler and a very light sleeper. My wife snores like hell. What would you recommend to stop her sonorous snores? I'm a snoozer. Use a stranglehold. Dear Skipper Bill, what is meant by the expression, a silent partner? Gangrene Gertie. A woman's husband. Dear Captain Bill, what makes the human race? Hammond eggs. Men and women chasing each other. Dear Skipper Bill, what's the difference between a cow and a baby? Dun O. Nutton. Well, a cow drinks water to make milk, while a baby just drinks milk. Dear Captain Bill, how can I keep my husband home at night? Worried newlywed. Take 5 pounds of fusel oil, 2 pounds of prunes, and 1 pound of raisins. Put it in a 5-gallon crock. Then for 9 dreary evenings, sit beside the crock and gently lift up the cheesecloth cover and hold communion therewith. It will sing a song to you in peculiar fashion, reminding you of the olden days when you put the parlor seashell to your ear to hear the wild waves roar. You'll hear Eva Tange singing I Don't Care. When the 10th day has come to pass, strain the contents of the crock into bottles, and then you can telephone your husband's drugstore and tell him to come home. You should have no further trouble in retaining his company. Dear Captain, what's the difference between a seagull and a baby? Flip-flop flapper. A seagull flips along the shore, while a baby slips along the floor. Dear Skipper Bill, don't you think that giving up drinking will assure a longer life? Repentant Soak. Perhaps you're right. I once gave it up for 24 hours, and it was the longest day I ever lived. Dear Farmer Billy, as an honest tiller of the soil, perhaps you can tell me the difference between an apple and a girl. Ann Arbor. Sure, you have to squeeze an apple before you can get cider. But with the girl, you have to get side her before you can squeeze her. Dear Captain Bill, I live in Milwaukee, and a neighbor of mine is always making home beer. Who should I report it to? Adam Sapple. Notify the American consul. Dear Sir and Captain, my husband, whenever he comes home intoxicated from moonshine liquor, kicks me in the stomach. What would you advise me to do? Abused wife. Turn your back on the brute. Dear Skipper, could you tell me who is the inventor of the loose leaf system? L. E. Fant. Eve. Dear Captain Jasbo, I have a sweetie girl with teeth quite pearly. I took her in my arms one night. She scratched and giggled and tried to bite. Can you guess what's worrying me? Himanjasus. Your poetry is punk, old trapper, and I'll answer you the same. You like to love, but you hate to fight with a dirty neck when you monkey bite. Dear Captain Bill, I see where you discuss at length the brevity of girls' attire, but I never see you object in your writings. How do you stand anyway? Noonan Night. Well, you don't see me wearing any smoked glasses. Dear Skipper Bill, what's your idea of a fine sight? Lotta Bull. I suppose you think I'll say hosiery, but guess again. My idea of a fine sight is the one I have on my bear hunting rifle. Dear Whiz-Bang Billy, what's the most useful food? Fletcher Eyes. Chicken, you can eat it before it's born and after it's dead. Dear Dr. Billy, what are the 3 great plagues of the world? Iva Sharp Pain. My expert diagnosis reveals that the 3 greatest are water on the knee, liquor on the hip, and women on the brain. Which pains you most? Dear Skipper, do you think it possible to get intoxicated on 1/2 of 1% beer? Ring around, A. Rosie. Sure, 200 bottles of 1/2 of 1% equals 100% drunk. The Deadly Mouse. What a brave, brave girl Mary is, said a young man in enthusiastic tones. Mary brave? How so? Inquired the young man's sister. Why, at the dance last night, said the young man. She was the only girl who kept her seat and remained perfectly cool when the mouse appeared. Pshaw, said the sister. That wasn't bravery. Mary told me afterwards that she had her old garters on. For private circulation. May I print a kiss upon your lips? Yes, provided you promise not to publish it. Bald-headed bad luck. The transport had just been torpedoed. After a little struggle in the moisture, Bill found himself safely within the confines of an empty lifeboat. Realizing that he was safe himself, he began to look around to see who needed assistance. Observing several men endeavoring to keep afloat nearby, he reached over the side and grabbed 2 of them by the hair and dragged them into the boat. Suddenly a bald-headed man appeared alongside the boat. Peering over it, Bill slapped him on the head and cried angrily, "Go on down and come up right." End of Section 8. Read by Ellen Corcoran.
Section 9 of Captain Billy's Whiz-Bang, Volume 2, Number 18, March 1921. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Captain Billy's Whiz-Bang, Volume 2, Number 18, March 1921, by W. H. Fawcett. Short Quips. The Deadly Mouse. "What a brave, brave girl Mary is," said a young man in enthusiastic tones. "Mary? Brave? How so?" inquired the young man's sister. "Why, at the dance last night," said the young man, "she was the only girl who kept her seat and remained perfectly cool when the mouse appeared." "Pshaw!" said his sister. "That wasn't bravery. Mary told me afterwards that she had her old garters on." For private circulation. "May I print a kiss upon your lips?" "Yes, provided you promise not to publish it." Bald-headed bad luck. The transport had just been torpedoed. After a little struggle in the moisture, Bill found himself safely within the confines of an empty lifeboat. Realizing he was safe himself, he began to look around to see who needed assistance. Observing several men endeavoring to keep afloat nearby, he reached over the side and grabbed 2 of them by the hair and dragged them into the boat. Suddenly, a bald-headed man appeared alongside the boat. Peering over the side, Bill slapped him on the head and cried angrily, "Go on down and come up right." Women. by Jack Andrews. The ever-perplexing, never-understanding, and most ancient of mysteries, woman, is still with us. With but slight variations, she is today the same enigma as were her predecessors running back to the beginning of time. The modern man starts out just about as the caveman did, only he believes he is more accomplished and capable of penetrating the veil that men of vast experience in dealing with the deadlier sex associate with the unknown origin. It is the incertitude of what woman will do that brings out the gambling spirit in all of us, makes wise men of some of us, and pessimists of the rest of us. When you find this type of pessimist, a man who breaks out the hammer as the talk tends toward women, wild and otherwise, just jot it down in your little notebook that at some time in his life a little bubble of conceit was pierced by a woman, and a man failed to measure up to the requirements. There is another class of supposedly male beings who continually rant about the women. They usually exhibit a holier-than-thou attitude when the pleasures of a woman's society are mentioned, and denounce them as contributors to the undoing of man. They boast of a virtue that stamps them as impotence, superinduced by their own follies, and makes of them living hypocrites ashamed to acknowledge the truth. A man who boasts of never a thought of women will certainly not be molested by real women. Remember this, my friends, that in the conquest for a woman's love, it is far better to be audacious, for to profess too great a virtue may cause them to doubt your virility. Embarrassing moments. A Robbinsdale schoolteacher had a class up to spell. They were very young. She pronounced the word leg. The young miss who was to spell it was very modest and couldn't spell it. A big awkward boy blushed furiously when it was passed down to him, and the next one spelled it. "And what is the definition?" she asked, elevating her eyebrows encouragingly. Nobody knew. "Why, children," she insisted, "surely you know that. What is it of which I have 2 and a cow has 4? There was an awkward pause for just a moment, and then a diminutive urchin at the front of the class yelled out an answer. The answer has not yet appeared in print, but they do say that there was a vacation for the rest of that day, while the teacher recovered consciousness. End of section 9.
Section 10 of Captain Billy's Whiz Bang, Volume 2, Number 18, March 1921. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Val Roth. Captain Willie's Whiz Bang, Volume 2, Number 18, March 1921, by W. H. Fawcett. Section 10. Whiz Bang Editorials. The bull is mightier than the bullet. During the past month, we have received an inquiry from a reader asking us to define a lounge lizard. We have nothing of that caliber in the rural community of Robbinsdale. Most of us are poor financially, but strong in the knowledge of Mother Nature and the homely ways of the farm and fireside. During the midst of our studies, we journeyed through Shakespeare's immortal King Lear, and in the scene before Gloucester's castle we find the following. Kent. Fellow, I know thee. Oswald. What dost thou know me for? Kent. A knave, a rascal, and a kneader of broken meats, a base, proud, shallow, beggarly, 3-suited, 100-pound, filthy worsted, stocking knave, a lily-livered, action-taking knave, a glass-gazing, super-serviceable, finical rogue, one that wouldst be abhorred in the way of good service, and are nothing but a mad composition of a knave, beggar, coward, and the son and heir of a mongrel. One whom I would beat into a clamoured whining if thou deniest the least syllable of thy addition. We have omitted some expressions from this denunciation. We have deliberately weakened it. We cannot find it in our soul possible to condemn any fellow man in such language as Shakespeare uses. We follow the quaint philosophy that every man has a redeeming quality, and that none combines the bald badness which Kant ascribes to Oswald. In our community, a man denounces another in few words. We shake our fist and call our enemy a blankety-blank son of a blank. Our language may not be as polished as Shakespeare, but it seems to satisfy the vendor. Wonder what a dog thinks while he sits hours at a time watching his master bending over a battered desk, pecking with 2 pitchfork-blistered fingers at a typewriter model of 1898? Have you ever stopped to consider the dog? I'll admit that in the 8 years my collie breed Shep has been my faithful companion, I have never stopped to give him thanks or to reason with myself why this dumb beast should love me so. As I work here by my old desk in the whiz-bang headquarters, Shep sits on his hindquarters panting. Occasionally, as I turn in a friendly glance, he points his nose as if inviting an affectionate pat. Shep seems to approve of my magazine. I really believe he understands what it is. He seems never so happy or affectionate as when he sits beside me in my study. When I'm in the field, he saunters about, paying little attention to me, but here in the study, he seems vitally and keenly interested. His attitude brings me to Senator Vest's plea for a dog. The best friend a man can have in the world may turn against him, said the senator. His son or daughter, whom he raised with kind and loving care, may prove ungrateful. Those who are nearest and dearest to us, those whom we trust with our happiness and our good name, may become traitors to our faith. The money a man has he may lose. It flies away from him when he perhaps needs it most. A man's reputation may be sacrificed in a moment of ill-considered action. Those who are prone to fall on their knees and do us honor when success is with us may be the first to cast the stone of malice when failure settles its clouds upon our heads. The one absolutely unselfish friend a man can have in this selfish world is his dog. A man's dog stands by him in health and in sickness, in poverty and in wealth. He will sleep in the cold ground when the wintry wind blows and the snow drives fiercely, if only he may be near his master's side. He will kiss the hand that has no food to offer him. He will lick the wounds and the sores that come from an encounter with the roughness of the world. He guards the sleep of his pauper master as if he were a prince. If fortune drives the master forth and outcast into the world, friendless and homeless, the faithful dog asks no higher privilege than to accompany him, to guard against dangers, to fight against his enemies. And when the last scene of all takes place, and death takes the master in its embrace, and his body is laid away in the cold ground, no matter if all other friends pursue their way, there by the graveside will be found the faithful dog, his head between his paws, his eyes open yet sad in alert watchfulness, ever faithful unto death. End of section 10.
Section 11 of Captain Billy's Whiz Bang, Volume 2, Number 18, March 1921. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Greg Roland. Captain Billy's Whiz Bang, Volume 2, Number 18, March 1921, by W. H. Fawcett. What daughter learned? Grandmother, come here, Diploma. Visitor, that's a funny name for your grandchild. Why do you call her that? You see, I sent my daughter to one of those northern seminaries, and that's all she brought back. Progress is our motto. Electrical appliances have superseded steam. Old-time sailing vessels are an antiquated dream. We have our horseless carriages driven by the rich. Our ladies wear silk stockings but never take a stitch. We have wireless telegraphy which flies o'er land and sea. We play upon the piano but never touch a key. The bellyache of former days is appendicitis now, and we are eating creamery butter that never saw a cow. Though progression is our motto and modern times have come to stay, thank God we raise our babies in the good old-fashioned way. Back to his childhood. Pat and Mike walked into a drugstore and said they wanted something to make them feel young again. The druggist gave them a well-known remedy, and Pat and Mike each took a swallow and started out. A block down the street, they took another swallow. "I feel 5 years younger," said Pat. "Begorra, I feel like a boy," said Mike. A few blocks farther, Pat said, "Bejabbers, Mike, don't drink another drop of that stuff. I've gone back to infancy." End of section 11.
Section 12 of Captain Billy's Whiz Bang, Volume 2, Number 18, March 1921. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Captain Billy's Whiz Bang, Volume 2, Number 18, March 1921, by W.H. Fawcett. Smokehouse Poetry, Part 1. Lasca, the rhythmic tale of a girl of the Rio Grande, and the stampede pictured by Paul Desprez will lead the Smokehouse Poetry for April. With it also will be In Flanders Field by Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae, which is being published after many requests. Colonel McCrae's simple song of tragedy was the Marseillaise of the Great World War. The author was a surgeon with the Canadian Expeditionary Forces and wrote the poem during the Battle of Ypres. The Shooting of Dan McGrew by Robert W. Service. A bunch of the boys were whooping it up in the Malamute saloon. The kid that tickled the music box was playing a jagtime tune. Back of the bar in a solo game sat Dangerous Dan McGrew, while watching his luck was the light of his love, the lady that was known as Lou. When out of the night which was 50 below, and into the din and the glare, there stumbled a miner fresh from the creeks, dog dirty and loaded for bear. He looked like a man with one foot in the grave, and scarcely the strength of a louse, as he tilted a poke of dust on the bar, and called for the drinks for the house. There was none could place the stranger's face, though we searched ourself for a clue, but we drank to his health, and the last to drink was Dangerous Dan McGrew. There are men that somehow just grip your eyes and hold them hard like a spell, and such was he, for he looked to me like a man who had lived in hell. With a face most hair and a glassy stare, like a dog whose day is done, as he watered the green stuff in his glass, and the drops fell one by one. Then I got to figuring who he was, and wondering what he'd do, when I turned, and there stood watching him was the lady who was known as Lou. The stranger's eyes wandered round the room, and seemed in a kind of a daze, till at last that old piano fell in the way of his wandering gaze. The ragtime kid was having a drink, there was no one else on the stool, and the stranger stumbled across the room and flopped down there like a fool. In a buckskin shirt that was glazed with dirt he sat, and I seen him sway. With a talon hand he clutched the keys. God, but that man could play. Were you ever out on the grate alone, when the night was awful clear, and the icy mountains held you in with a silence that you most could hear? With only the howl of a timber wolf, as you camped out there in the cold, a half-dead thing in a stark dead world, clean mad for the muck called gold. while high overhead, green, yellow and red, the northern lights swept in bars. Then you've a hunch what the music meant, hunger, night and the stars. Hunger not of the belly kind that's banished with bacon and beans, but the gnawing hunger of a lonely man for a home and all that it means. For a fireside far from the cares that are, four walls and a roof above, but oh so crammed full of cosy joy, and crowned with a woman's love. A woman dearer than all the world, and true as heaven is true. God, how ghastly she looks through her rouge, the lady who was known as Lou. The music almost died away, so soft that you scarce could hear, and you felt that your life had been looted of all that it once held dear. That someone had stolen the woman you loved, and her love was a devil's lie, and your guts were gone, and the best for you was to crawl away and die. 'Twas the crowning glory of a heart's despair, and it thrilled you through and through. I guess I'll make it a spread misere, said dangerous Dan McGrew. The music almost died away, then off burst like a pent-up flood, and it seemed to say, repay, repay, and your eyes went blind with blood. And the thought came back like an ancient wrong, and it stung like a frozen lash, and the lust awoke to kill, and the music stopped with a flash. The stranger turned, and his eyes they burned in a most peculiar way. In a buckskin shirt that was glazed with dirt, he sat, and I seen him sway. Then his lips went in a kind of grin, and he spoke, and his voice was strong. And boys, he said, you don't know me, and none of you care a damn. But I want to state, and my words are straight, and I'll bet my poke they're true, that one of you is a hound of hell, and that one is Dan McGrew. Then I ducked my head, and the lights went out, and two guns blazed in the dark. Then the lights went up, and a woman screamed, and two men lay stiff and stark. Pitched on his head and pumped full of lead lay dangerous Dan McGrew, while the man from the creeks lay crushed to the breast of the lady that was known as Lou. These are the simple facts of the case, and I guess I ought to know. They said that the stranger was crazed with hooch, and I'm not denying it's so. I'm not so wise as their lawyer guys, but strictly between us two, the woman that kissed him and pinched his poke was the lady that was known as Lou. My Little Homemade Bar. While the wintry wind is blowing, and it's hailing and it's snowing, folks'll wonder how I manage to keep warm. If they only knew the reason why I always keep in season, at my door an endless line would straightway form. Comes the summer hot and torrid, I don't swear it's blinking horrid, it's a time for joy and comfort, I declare. For in my lonely cellar is the cosiest rathskeller, that's my little homemade bar beneath the stair. Thus I scorn official blighters who'd regenerate booze fighters by arresting them and placing them in jail. Virtue can't be legislated into man degenerated, ancient rights can't be usurped, they will prevail. So I'm happy, hale and hearty, and sometimes put on a party of my own without a solitary care, where I spend such blissful hours in the fairest of all bowers, in my little homemade bar beneath the stair. I doubt if you don't. When the Whiz Bang first made its debut into the world in 1919, we published the poem I Don't. Now steps up a contributor and offers an answer to it. Both of them have punch and pep, so we are offering these twin sisters of poetic mirth for your approval herewith. The Editor. I don't. Mamma told me not to smoke. I don't. Nor listen to a naughty joke. I don't. They made it clear I must not wink at handsome men, nor even think about intoxicating drink. I don't. To dance and flirt is very wrong. I don't. While girls chase men, wine and song, I don't. I kiss no boys, not even one. I do not know how it is done. You wouldn't think I'd have much fun. I don't. In answer to the above. When a pair of red lips are upturned to your own, with none to gossip about it, do you pray for endurance and leave them alone? Well, maybe you do, but I doubt it. When a shy little hand you're permitted to seize, with a velvety softness about it, do you think you can drop it with never a squeeze? Well, maybe you do, but I doubt it. When a tapering waist is in reach of your arm, with a wonderful plumpness about it, do you argue the point twixt the good and the harm? Well, maybe you do, but I doubt it. End of section 12, read by Alan Mapstone.
Section 13 of Captain Billy's Whiz Bang, Volume 2, Number 18, March 1921. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Alan Lawley. Captain Billy's Whiz Bang, Volume 2, Number 18, March 1921, by W. H. Fawcett. Smokehouse Poetry, Part 2. A Ballad of Forsaken Wives, by Mrs. Henry Mobley. My husband's gone and left me in the hills of Brown, forsaken me on account of others of this little town. He always been a blacksmith. I treated the man well. The last words he told me were, I'd better go to hell. It was awful hard to swallow, hard to get it down. Now he's forsaken me for others of this little town. He wants a younger woman in his older day. He says I'm getting old and I'm turning grey. I always tried to treat him right and do the best I could, but the worst words he could say to me always done him good. He is getting old and I'm getting grey, but he'll see the time he'll wish he hadn't went away. He's gone and left me all alone. Perhaps he'll take one with him he can call his own. He's gone and left me in the hills of Brown, forsaken me on account of others of this little town. He's mine, let him go. God bless him wherever he may be. He can travel the wide world over and never find one like me. The Dying Hobo. 'Twas dawned by a western water tank one cold November day. There in an open boxcar a dying hobo lay. His partner stood beside him with a sadly drooping head, listening to the last words that the dying hobo said. Goodbye, old pal, I'm going to a land where all is bright, where handouts grow in the bushes and you can sleep out every night. The dying hobo's head dropped back, and as he sang his last refrain, his partner stole his shoes and socks and grabbed an eastbound train. Said a giddy old maid named Biddy McHugh, I'd like to be good and I'd like to be true, for it's good to be good, but I'm not made of wood. Boo-hoo, boo-hoo, no wonder I'm blue. Two Women by N.P. Willis. The shadows lay along Broadway. 'Twas near the twilight tide, and slowly there a lady fair was walking in her pride. Alone walked she, but viewlessly walked spirits at her side. Peace charmed the street beneath her feet, and honor charmed the air, and all astir looked kind on her, and called her good and fair, for all God ever gave to her, she kept with cherry care. She kept with care her beauties rare, from lovers warm and true, for her heart was cold to all but gold, and the rich came not to woo, but honored well our charms to sell, if rights the selling do. Now walking there was one more fair, a slight girl, lily pale, and she had unseen company to make the spirit quail. To wit's want and scorn she walked forlorn, and nothing could avail. No mercy now can clear her brow, for this world's peace to pray. For as love's wild prayer dissolved in air, her woman's heart gave way. But the sin forgiven by Christ in heaven, by man is cursed away. Ring around the rosy cellar full of booze. We can have a party any time we choose. The night before payday. 'Twas the night before payday, and all through my jeans I searched but in vain for the price of some beans. Not a quarter was stirring, not even a jit. The coin was off duty, milled edges had quit. Move forward, O time, in thy flight. Make it tomorrow, just for tonight. Hubby came home tangle-footed. His wife met him at the door, grabbed the bottle from his pocket. Empty? Go and get some more. Irene Talbot, skillful typist, works for Dave A. Masterbuilt, writes a neat and snappy letter, marks it in this way. Damn it. A Plea for the Prodigal Girl by O.D. Copeland. I've read The Death of the Martyrs, the story of Peter and Paul, the story of Luther and Calvin. I respect and honor them all. And also old Thomas and Stephen, honest and faithful men. And I've read the sweet story of Jesus, and expect to read it again. I've read of the Good Samaritan, of charity's lesson begun, and my heart goes out in great pity to the wayward prodigal son. All are so glad to welcome him, so quick to forget and forgive. It makes no difference what he has done, if only comes back to live. They have always prayed for the prodigal boy, since ever the world begun. The joy, the glory, forgiveness of the returning wayward son. But poets seem to forget to write of the saddest thing in the world. They are not so eager to welcome back the poor little prodigal girl. Just why she had turned out crooked, she happened to strike the right one, who had the slick tongue of a Judas, and that was your prodigal son. Though the boy is upheld and forgiven, it is common all over the world that you scornfully point out for gossip the poor little prodigal girl. There is nothing so truly pathetic as the life of the maidens who fall, and if you search down to the bottom, you will find man the cause of it all. But he is led back in society and nursed with the tenderest care, held up to the world as a hero, and mentioned in fervent prayer, while she is cast out from her loved ones, out in the hard, cruel world, and everyone points out and scorns her, the poor little prodigal girl. Now, as has been said quite often, and we will repeat it again, that the lowest of fallen women are better than most of the men. 10-year Mary saw her mother dolled all up, skirt a la sport. Mamma, when will I be grown up, and can wear my dresses short? Ahoy, Liza's fig tree! Returning from France, a coloured trooper was awakened from his nap on the deck by a companion, who shouted to him to get up and look at a passing sailboat. "Nigger," drowsily answered the reclined trooper, "don't you all waken me again till we pass a tree." Something to worry about. In Persia, boys and girls never play together. Customer in soft drink parlor. "Hey there, bartender, stop killing those flies. Don't you suppose I want a little kick in my beer?" Squaring himself. Everyone has heard authentic stories of the man who asked another, "Who is that old slob over yonder?" and got the reply, "She is my wife." But the story doesn't go far enough. Jones observed an old lady sitting across the room. "For heaven's sake," he remarked to Robinson, "who is that extraordinarily ugly woman there?" "That," answered Robinson, "is my wife." Jones was taken aback, but moved up front again. "Well," he said persuasively, "you just ought to see mine." End of section 13.
Section 14 of Captain Billy's Whiz Bang, Volume 2, Number 18, March 1921. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Captain Billy's Whiz Bang, Volume 2, Number 18, March 1921, by W. H. Fawcett. Read by Quartertone. Pasture Potpourri. Oh, boys, what wouldn't I give for just an acre of Cuba in the center of the Whiz Bang farm? The reason why Dan Cupid makes so many bad shots is because he aims at the heart while looking at the hosiery. Give me a Jane with a little eye, and a nose so very long, 2 lips that quiver and make you give her a sample of your tongue. I got a gal, she's neat, sweet as turkey meat, with a great big leg and tooty-wooty feet. Our latest song success. Never mind the bread, mother. Father will soon be home with a bun.
It makes no difference what you are, or what you might have been, but if you want a drink that's fast, get a quart of Old Sloe Gin. Love Croon of a Gambler. Dearie, oh dearie, if I could have held a hand like this years ago, who knows but what I might have had a full house now. Absinthe makes the heart grow fonder, also makes the poor brain wander. Eczema, you can't belong to our union. You're too much of a scab. Mama loves Papa, and Papa loves women. A he-vamp's motto. If you want one, thin or fat, get her address from my flat. Latest reports from Cork, Ireland indicate that the Sinn Féin have taken Pluto but cannot hold it. A girl may drive a coach, or even a motor car, but the girl who rides a horseback is stretching things too far. Brethren and sistern, our text for today will be taken from the book of Whiz Bang, chapter 4:11:44, verse 7:11. He who sitteth on a red-hot stove shall rise again. Good advice. Mother, may I go out to skate? Yes, my darling Julia, but don't you try the figure 8, for it will surely fool ya. Just as you make a fancy whirl to show your springy muscle, the boys will see a foolish girl sleigh-riding on her bustle. Brutus. Sign in Natchez. Patrons depositing in this bank are respectfully requested not to leave any small change on the counter. Natchez must indeed be careless. Latest Ballad. We will now sing The Liveryman's Sweet Daughter, All But Me Knew Her. Sweet patootie, gasped the bee as he pushed his head high enough to get a breath of fresh air. Bees may come and bees may go, but the bowl goes on forever. Batter up for the wheat cakes, shouted the cook in the beanery, who was an ex-umpire. A successful magazine cover is one that has very little cover for the girl. Poor fish. I wish I was a fish, a-frozen in the ice, then I could watch the girlies skate. Oh, wouldn't that be nice? Am I right or am I wrong? Pure water is the best of gifts that man to man can bring, but who am I that I should have the best of anything? Let princes revel at the pump, peers with the pond make free, but old-time bourbon, wine, or beer are good enough for me. Here's to the short skirt and the low waist, may they never meet. Speaking of hosiery, most of us keep at least one eye on the temptation we pray not to be led into. No, Aloysius, Easter Sunday is not related to Billy Sunday. Sweetheart Blues. I got a man, won't tell you his name, 'cause your man and my man may be the same. Solomon's interpretation of the white slave law. Love them where you find them, and leave them where you love them. Pat's narrow escape. Pat and Mike, working on a night shift in a mill, decide that their work can be done by one, and arranged that they would alternate on the job after the boss went home at midnight. The first night it was Pat's turn to go home. A half-hour later, he surprised Mike by rushing into the mill and hurrying into his overalls. "Mike," he exclaimed, "I nearly got caught. I was just about to walk into my home when I saw, through the window, the boss eating a midnight supper with my wife." Here's to Gretchen in the kitchen, frying doughnuts in the grease, with her lover bending over her, coaxing, begging for a piece of the doughnuts in the grease. Little Miss Muffet, who sat on a tuffet eating her lunch one day, when a speeder espied her and drew up beside her, and both of them beat it away. Foolish Bunk. We cannot see any head or tail to this story, but as my good friend Neely sent it in, I'll publish it for his benefit. Captain Billy. A young man had an appointment for a lesson in phrenology, and also an appointment to meet his sweetheart. He was undecided which to keep when the girl telephoned. Learning of his difficulties, she asked him if he had a coin in his pocket. He replied affirmatively. "Well, flip it," she said. Not a Scotch soldier. Scene: hotel veranda in Rhodesia. Time 8:30 a.m. early 1919. Personae: a South African Scottish NCO in the garb of old Gael, and civilian to whom the former is telling the war tale. Enter Indian waiter, who breathlessly addresses the soldier. "You are wanted, sir, at once, at room 23, and the lady says she feels bad this morning." "Great Scott! What lady? Excuse me, you fellas." Proceeds his hasty flight upstairs, where he had already noted that morning the presence of a very dainty pair of ladies' shoes outside the door of number 23. Knocking at the door, it was partially opened, and the fair unknown, peeping through the crack, no sooner caught sight of the kiltie than she exclaimed, "My God, what do you want here?" Soldier. "The coolie waiter said you wanted me badly." Lady. "The fool! Why, I sent him for a Scotch and soda." "I was born in Kentucky, raised in Tennessee. If you don't like my peaches, don't shake my tree. Oh, tell me, how long must I have to wait? Will you jazz with me now, or must I hesitate?" End of section 14. Section 15 of Captain Billy's Whiz-Bang, Volume 2, Number 18, March 1921. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Captain Billy's Whiz-Bang, Volume 2, Number 18, March 1921, by W. H. Fawcett. Read by Quartertone. Classified ads. Getting Rid of Grandma, from the Mount Horeb, Wisconsin Times. Crowan Brothers have been doing a land office business butchering hags for individual families in town. Objection sustained? From the Clarendon, England Mercury. Wanted. A really plain but experienced and efficient governess for 3 girls, eldest 10. Music, French, and Latin required. Brilliancy of conversation, fascination of manner, and symmetry of form objected to, as the father is much at home, and there are grown-up sons. Arise, ye dead, and walk. Sign in Seattle streetcar. The beautiful mausoleum at Washelli Cemetery affords a royal resting place for those that sleep in death. For directions to get there, phone Ballard 1850. They feel nice on your cheek. Advertisement in Indianapolis Star. Oh, so warm. Ankle-length satin bloomers, with the prettiest shirred cuff. It's the quality of soft satin you'd like to feel against your cheek. All soldiers invited. From Keene, New Hampshire Democrat. There will be a bean supper at the First Unitarian Church on Saturday night, followed by a musical program. Models, Cars, and Otherwise. From the Des Moines Tribune. If party who stole Cadillac car Saturday will return pictures and films taken from car, he can keep car. Pictures are priceless and impossible to replace. Mail to Des Moines Photo Materials Company. A Noiseless Rumor. From New Orleans Times-Picayune. With private, Uptown or Carrollton by young man. When at home, I read or sleep, both quietly. Reserve us a sandhole, please. From Honolulu Star Bulletin. Wanted. Young woman to share apartment on beach. What every woman ought to know. From the Davenport Democrat and Leader. Reverend Mr. Rewlands gave his address following the supper hour, and about 75 women of the congregation were present to hear him. His subject was, "The kind of service men can render to the church and to the world." Oh, my dear, you should have seen him. From the Hampton, Iowa Chronicle. The thieves took everything else he had in the room. Mr. Ferris borrowed a pair of pants from the housemaid while he went out to a store and secured a pair of shoes, socks, etc. Man proposes, but not always marriage. Scotch thrift. Sandy, the office manager, approached Annie, the stenographer, for another loan of $10. It was a weekly occurrence, and always had been granted. "Well, Miss Laurie, here I am again to borrow the usual 10-spot, he said. "Funny, isn't it? Here I am making 3 times as much money as you, and yet I have to borrow money from you every week. You always have money on hand, and I feel ashamed to ask you for another loan." "Oh, that's all right," replied Annie. "I haven't as much money as you think, but I have borrowed from the boss and always managed to hoard a little bit." "The deuce you do!" exclaimed Sandy. "That's what I've been doing with your 10-spots." There was a young chicken named Rose, who wore the most wonderful hose. They set the men staring, but she wasn't caring, for that's why she wore them, I suppose. Perfect cleanliness. "Martha, have you wiped the sink dry yet?" asked the farmer as he made ready for bed. "Yes, Joshua. Why do you ask?" "Well, I did want a drink of water, but I guess I can wait until morning." Miss Allison's sensations. We've heard lots of gossip from Hollywood, but it takes a Philadelphia question and answers editor to win the rubber medal in the following. Q. Who is the movie actress whose horse ran away with her recently? A. This blushing experience befell May Allison recently while enacting the famous ride of Lady Godiva in Hollywood. The scene was made at night, and Miss Allison, clad only in a long, flowing blonde wig, was riding her horse down the street when the animal took fright at the brilliant lights and made a bolt for a public street. A nice neighborhood. 2 neighbor women were having a word battle over the backyard fence. Mrs. Brown. "I know more about your husband than you do." Mrs. Jones. "Then you had better keep silent, as I know more about you than your husband does." Within the law. Izzy was seen with an enormous diamond pin. His friend Mo couldn't understand where Izzy got $1,000 to pay for it, so Izzy explained, "My uncle died and left $1,000 for a stone to his memory. I was the executor, and this is the stone." Just jokes and jingles. "Have you anything to say before leaving the stand?" asked the judge after pronouncing a death sentence upon a Negro murderer. "Yes, sir, Jedge," replied the prisoner. "I wants to say right here that this is going to be a lesson to me." The melancholy days have come, the saddest of the year. It's much too warm for moonshine, and too cold for darn near beer. He snuffs it. Hashish Kid. This is a grand town. Just imagine a quart of hooch at 50 cents a bottle. Thirsty stranger. "Shh! Where can I get it?" "I don't know," I said. "Just imagine it." A hobo's lament. "I said, 'Good man, can you help me? I'm a millionaire, dead broke.' But the poor old man was deaf and dumb. I could tell by the way he spoke." Officer. "Why didn't you salute? Don't you know I'm a captain?" Buck Private. "That's a darn good job. Hang on to it." "Late house tonight, my love," she'll say. "Midnight or later, maybe. If I'm not home till break of day, you stand to with the baby." "I have a wife, and I have a flivver. My license to run the flivver is okay, but my license to run my wife absolutely is the bunk." Feminine intuition. Speaking of women having more sense than men, Did you ever notice that when the baby gets big enough to walk, father wants to give away the baby carriage, but mother puts it in the garret? Filipino style. At the quaint shop in Sterling, Illinois, one can buy bead necklaces, so beautiful, as the shop quaintly puts it, that every woman will want a string to wear if she hasn't anything else. A new idea is like an egg. The responsible party simply can't help talking about it. End of section 15. Section 16 of Captain Billy's Whiz Bang, Volume 2, Number 18, March 1921. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Captain Billy's Whiz Bang, Volume 2, Number 18, March 1921, by W. H. Fawcett. Read by Quartertone. Our Rural Mailbag. Dear Captain Billy, I heartily agree with you in the belief that man is a strange wild beast, and whenever he gets what he wanted, he wonders why he wanted it. That's why I'm on my way to Hot Springs singing the rheumatic blues. Sunset Slim. Aromatic Army Cook. Yes, I understand that the troop of Boston soldiers you mentioned moved to Seattle so they could live on the Sound. Blonde Beauty. I do not know what you mean by the expression, he has a Siberian dashboard, unless it's whiskers. Pay no attention to smooth French talk. He's bullying you. Abe Goldberg. No, I wouldn't advise you to locate your undertaking establishment in O'Rourke Park, Butte, Montana. You might as well sing Wearing of the Green in Piccadilly Circus if that's all the value you attach to your life. A. L. Tioga. Sorry we can't use your story about the barrel of apples and the sack of nuts by which the family rat was caught. Sweet Dottie. You say you do some awful things sometimes, but then it's only to keep warm. If that's your only reason, you had better postpone your new leaf turning until summer. Brigham in Young. We've heard your story before about the stenographer who got $25 a week and half her board. Bobby. I have heard that it goes good in cider. Misconstrue. You say you miss your husband so often. Do you mean when you throw things at him? Mama's in the kitchen singing alcoholic blues. Father's in the cellar drinking alcoholic booze. The Cemetery Blues. The graveyard is a mean old place. They lay you on your back and shovel dirt in your face. Blissful Ignorance. Coed. I want something to wear around the dormitory. Salesgirl. How large is your dormitory? Whistling to Hades. Two girls from the city were spending their vacation in a small town in the Middle West, and at the house where they were stopping was a devout old man who believed that the Blue Sunday laws should go into effect full blast. It so happened that the girls were in the parlor one Sunday morning playing the popular airs when the devout sir entered and said, "Do you know this is Sunday?" "Sure. What's the big idea?" "Do you know the 10 Commandments?" "Well, if you whistled the first 2 or 3 bars, I might get them." It isn't the things we've won and possessed that fills the coffers of life to overflowing. It's the things we've lost, the things that make for sweet memories. That's the sum and substance of life that endures, memories and their lessons. This is March, the month when the wind is tempered either to the lion or to the shorn lamb, and soon the grass will be green and the wind will be tempered for the silk-clad calf. Oh, boys, I'll say we can anticipate. When the ball bearings of the new Association of Nations gets rolling smoothly, we understand that Jerusalem will be given to the Jews, Ireland to the Irish, Iceland to the Icemen, and New York City to the United States. A church scandal. The little man approached a saleswoman and sputtered, "You got me into a pickle, you did." I don't understand, the girl replied timidly. You remember when I came in here to pick out a silk dress for my wife, don't you? Yes. And you remember we asked the assistance of the lady who was buying a kilty skirt for her little girl? Yes, yes. Well, you got the parcels mixed, that's what you did, and I took that little kilty skirt home to my wife. I'm awfully sorry, sir, but of course we can put that right. How? I can change the skirt. I know you can, but that isn't the trouble. My wife opened the parcel while I was away, thought it was the latest style, and wore the wretched thing to church on Sunday. Smith family accounted for. A Chicago schoolgirl in her history examination answered that Jamestown, Virginia was settled in 1607, and there were 120 deaths and 72 births in the first year, due to the efforts of Captain John Smith. Hubby for her. A lady heard that her 2 sons were in the habit, each at separate times and quite unknown to each other, of taking one of the maids out for a lark. Fearing to bring down on their devoted heads the wrath of their father by making a bother about it, she asked them quietly if it were true, but could obtain no satisfactory reply. It occurred to her that by a little strategy she might get the truth from one of the girls, so she said in a jocular manner, Now, Mary, I want you to answer me candidly. Which of my 2 sons do you like going out with best, George or William? Well, ma'am, replied the maid, reassured by the lady's manner, if you must know, of the 2 I like George the best, but for a downright good spree, give me the master every time. Can't. I'm hitched now. By Tad. If you don't feel just right, if you can't sleep at night, if you moan and sigh, if your throat is dry, if you can't smoke or drink, if your grub tastes like ink, if your heart doesn't beat, if you've got bad cold feet, if your head's in a whirl, why not marry the girl? You're not the only pebble on the beach. There's a Little Rock in Arkansas. Lingo of the lingerie. She was a fair-haired, fluffy little thing who had taken a position as a saleswoman in a department store. A few days later, she met a boy friend, and both stopped to have a little chat. How do you like your job? Inquired the boy friend. Oh, I like it very much, said the fluffy one. Only they shift me about too much. At 12 o'clock I'm in hats, at 3 I'm in dresses, at 4 I'm in lingerie, at 6 I'm in stockings, and I'll look you up tomorrow at 8, said he. Evolution of a flea. The evolution theory, said the professor, is that we all came from monkeys. That's wrong, said the flea, biting him on his bald head. I came from a dog. Only at night. He does it when no one's about, just as we're going to bed, explained a Kingston wife, applying for separation against her husband, who, she asserted, was always tearing up her clothes, etc. End of section 16. End of Captain Willie's Whiz-Bang, Volume 2, Number 18, March 1921, by W. H. Fawcett.